Welcome, everyone, to the Choose to Be podcast. Thanks for joining us. As always, we love knowing that you all are out there listening. And as always, thanks for the feedback. Please, as a reminder, though, we would love for those of you who are on Apple Podcast, or if you can access Apple Podcast, head over, leave a review. It helps other women who are in this very sacred, gentle, hard space to find this podcast. So continue to share your reviews. It really does help. And we just love all of our listeners so much. We think about you guys all the time. We talk about you all the time. And hopefully today's episode helps those of you, again, in any stage that you're at. Well, we hope that this episode meets you where you are at. So we're talking about a really common question that I think everyone, again, no matter where you're at, has asked themselves or their professional this question: will I ever heal? And just even Alana, thinking about that question, will I ever heal? So many more of those questions along this line came to my mind. Will I ever stop crying? Will I ever be happy? Will I ever trust again? Will I ever love? Will I ever be loved? Is this a life sentence? Those types of questions fall underneath this idea of, will it ever get better? And hopefully, at the end of this podcast, you will walk away with hope that it will get better. I've shared this before. I don't remember how long ago. I know I've definitely shared it on my other the Empowered Divorce podcast, Alana, but it was that story of when I had left and I was in Arizona with my parents and I went to their church congregation ward, whatever, for the first couple times. And I just sat there in just meltdown mode. Like, I can still see myself sitting on the bench and I just had my arms folded and my head down and I didn't want to talk to anybody. I hated what I was hearing because it was all family stuff, and I'm surrounded by families. I'm surrounded by couples. I felt just like my life was just absolutely crumbling at that time. And here I am in this new space, new people, feeling like I'm never going to be happy again. I'm never going to feel normal ever again. And that low, low space. And I had a woman after the sermon come up to me. I had no idea who she was. She didn't really know who I was. And she just knew I was new. And she said, I don't know what you're going through. And I don't need to know. But I just want you to know that I promise it gets better. And there was something about that moment. I'll never forget it. But there was that moment. Number one, someone saw me who had been through it. And I actually do know now that she had been through it. So she recognized that space of despair and hopelessness and wondering if you'll ever get better. She saw that in me and she reached out. And then she gave me the most hopeful words that I just needed in that moment. It will get better. Where I felt like there's no way it's going to get better. I can't see a way for it to ever get better. So I want to just share those words with those of you who are listening right now who might be in this very same space where you just think there's no way it's going to get better. How can it? I promise it gets better. And the fact that you're here, the fact that you're listening, the fact that you're trying to see another way, just that alone is evidence that you are doing, you're moving, you're trying. It will get better. So that would be my goal. Everybody just to walk away with that hope that it gets better when you are in the space of will it ever? Because I get it. I know you get it too, Lana.
I just think of so many people who go on and then do work as a sponsor or as a group leader or a professional coach or a therapist who have been through this. Almost all of them will say, I do it because I never want somebody to feel what I felt like in the beginning, because I felt so hopeless and so alone. And I remember I used to use the analogy of I feel like somebody took me from the light of day and threw me in this pitch black darkness. And there's no stars, there's no moon, there's no sun, and it is just pitch black. And I'm trying to get oriented and I'm scared and I can't see any light in any direction. And so, yeah, it feels like there's no hope. And I remember on my journey feeling like all of a sudden, oh, there's this tiny little star. I joined a group, and that group felt like water when I had been dehydrated and just dying of thirst. But it wasn't enough to like carry me through my whole week. It was this tiny little pinprick of light where I could find a little bit of hope, but I was still drowning and dying in my everyday life. And then I got another little star. And then at some point, the moon came up, and that was still more bright, but it was not daytime. Yes, there was light, and yes, I could see the path a little bit in front of me, but I was still so much in the dark. And then at some point in the journey, the sun started to come up. But I go walking every morning, and currently, right now, the way it works out, I start in the dark, and by the time I'm done, the sun is up. And in that hour of walking, it is really gradual, but like it's an hour. But in this path, for the sun to actually come up felt like it took a lifetime, and at every stage, it was like, "Well, this is it. Can it get any better than this?" So the whole path of, like, wherever you are feels so much of, "This is it. This is my reality," and I totally use that statement of, "This is my prison sentence now." Especially when I did choose to stay in my marriage, I was like, "Well, I'm staying in my marriage. This is my prison sentence. I will just have triggers forever."
Yeah, yeah.
Peace, but that's sure how it feels.
Yeah, my divorce leads or those that are on their way out too ask the same thing. Maybe I'm just this is my life sentence to have to deal with the post separation abuse and dealing with all of that. It's just my life sentence. Is this my life sentence? Is what they're asking. And so again, wherever you're at in your journey, I think we hear this a lot and we ask this question a lot, and it makes sense. So we want to validate that space. You're not crazy. You're not doing something wrong. You're not lacking in some way. This is a very, I think, powerful question to ask. So let's divide this up, Alana. I would love to just start with those who are in the very beginning stages of betrayal trauma work, of discovery or disclosure, where the tenderness of it is a little bit raw, maybe, and they are wondering if they're ever gonna get out of bed or stop crying in public and stop crying when you just see someone hold someone's hand, like all of those very sensitive triggers. Let's just name off a few of our top maybe things that we would recommend on what can aid you, help you heal and aid you in this tender moment. You mentioned one of them that I'm just gonna validate, finding support, the support
Oh,
group.
mhm.
That would be one that I would say.
And I feel like even that one, we need to slow it down and give extra attention to. There's groups out there that you can find a group that supports you, and there's groups that can be based off of religion. It can be based off of whether you're new in trauma. It can be based off of general trauma. It can be a 12-step group. There's lots of different types of groups out there. And so it's finding a group that you feel comfortable with that feels like it meets your needs for where you're at. I would highly suggest having a basic betrayal trauma group if you are brand new starting. But then there's also support of finding people in your everyday life who could be safe for you, finding a good coach or good therapist or a sponsor, finding another man or woman who is further along in the journey who's experienced this, those type of things. There's so much that goes into a support system. And if people don't have any support system, that really will slow down your healing. Having people you can regularly talk to and lean on makes such a difference.
I love that you just said that, and why does that slow down your healing? Can you just answer that briefly? I know we could do that whole podcast on it, but
Well, and I'll answer it by flipping it of like how it helps because maybe saying slowing it down isn't quite fair, but it does help and speed up the process when you have people that you can turn to and process with outside of just the person who hurt you. And in some cases, you can't at all go to the person that hurt you. And if you can, that's wonderful. But outside of that, you need other people who understand, who get it, who can just hold space for it, who don't try to talk you out of it, who don't bypass what you're experiencing and try to get you to a different place. who literally can just sit there with you in it. And even better, if they've walked the path, that when you're ready to not just hear that validation, have that support, but they can give you tools for where you specifically are at. Because I have a whole toolbox, but what I give someone on day one is also going to look very different on day 60 versus day 180. So having somebody who knows how to support you at any given stage can be really helpful.
Yeah. Thank you for slowing that down. I think that's so important. The next one that I would say is self-care. And did you listen to that podcast episode that I sent you, by the way, on self-care with,
Oh, but I've thought about it many times. Amy will send me these podcasts,
and
and
you never listened to 'em?
sometimes clients will, and they torture me because I love information, but I don't have time for random stuff to pop into my life. It has to be like planned out. And so you're literally pinned to the top of my favorite, so I won't forget. But every time I open up my phone, I'm like, oh, I gotta listen to that podcast. Gotta listen to it. It's We Can Do Hard Things podcast, and it's called Real Self Care. Burnout is not your fault and the way out.
That's the episode, and I was listening to them talk about self-care and the difference between internal and external self-care. How a lot of times what we are buying into as self-care is really just another form of the world's, "You need to buy more, do your nails, do your hair," or whatever. We're buying into this idea of what we're supposed to do externally to make us feel something different internally, and she was really breaking it down beautifully, I thought, of it made my feminist heart happy, but just this beautiful way of don't buy in to what everyone else is telling you is self-care. And especially if you're now like, oh, this person is doing this yoga and has to have this yoga pants and that's self-care. And I'm being told that if I do this, da, 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 then I will then feel more empowered or whatever. When her whole point was just hold on a second, time out. And she's not dissing any of the things that we do that call self-care, but her point was like, if you go and take a bath and you come out of that bath just as dysregulated and irritated at people around you in the world, that wasn't self-care. And it's just like really caring for in your innards. She didn't use that word, I am, but get inside and care for the parts of the self that need nourishing, cared for, seen, heard, validated. What maybe external thing helps you do that? But we get so focused on the external that you can go get your hair done and nails done and check off all the boxes that are called so-called self-care in the world, and you really aren't actually showing up differently inside. You're just as disconnected and dysregulated with yourself. And so I like her language. I like how she talks about it. And she gave 4 things around self-care: boundaries, compassion, values, and power.
Ooh, say those again.
Boundaries, compassion, values, and power. And that these have to come from you, and that when you tap into these, you will always get when you tap into boundaries, compassion, and values, you'll get a shift in your power.
I love that. And I think about a lot of the early work I'm doing with my clients, and it naturally incorporates a lot of that. And when you said self care, my next one I would have gone to would be self compassion.
Mm,
So to have compassion be thrown in there, because those are so fundamental as part of the healing process. I notice men and women alike really do a terrible job allowing themselves really healthy self care and self compassion.
yeah. But listen to it because she walks through all of those, and I just again, I love what she says, but she did say one thing that I think is really important for anybody in any stage to hear. She was talking about how real self-care is not gonna work when you're still putting yourself in situations where your entire system is in fight freeze. Like, when you're and that's when she made the comment of, if you're in hypervigilance because you're still in a situation where you are needing to be hypervigilant, you can go take a bath and then you're going to get out and you're still going to be hypervigilant. And then you're going to blame yourself. Maybe I didn't self care enough. Maybe I'm just doing self care wrong. And I love that she was talking about that. And then we think we're showing up and self caring wrong as women, especially. It's a powerful message. I'll put the link in there. Then she goes over boundaries. And I love how she says boundaries is a pause. Boundaries, creating a boundary is a pause. so that you can pause and decide, is this something that I want to engage in or not? And that's giving yourself power. So beautiful episode, but those, I think, Alana, really fall into the how this can aid your healing journey when you feel like, will I ever get better? Will it ever change? This is how you can start to answer that question for yourself.
Thank you for giving that extra little bit on the if you are still in the fight, flight, or freeze, because I was about to give just a quick caveat of, look, when you are in new, fresh trauma, you could do self care from the minute you wake up till the minute you go to bed. And that doesn't mean that you are going to feel amazing and relaxed and rejuvenated and that your system is going to be healed. I've had clients do this and it doesn't work. And actually, I've also assigned clients of we are going to take a certain amount of time out of the day where you are not allowed to do recovery work and you are not allowed to do healing work and you are just going to live and be present in whatever's happening in your life, which can be really, really hard. And so yes, thank you for that because we have to do self care at the beginning. No matter what, we need it every single day with consistency. And you might not feel the benefits of it for a while. And that's normal.
And that's where I think it leads to the next one that I was thinking about is psychoeducation, getting educated and learning about what betrayal trauma is, learning about your experience, putting a language. I'll never forget. I know I've said this before, but my first book that someone gave me was Sitting in a Rowboat Throwing Marbles at a Battleship. I don't even know if you can get that anymore, but it's so old. I don't even know if I'd recommend it anymore. It's so old, but it was giving a language to what I had been experiencing because it was written from an addict and he was talking about his journey and he wrote one little blip to the partner validating her experience and I sobbed like a baby to have someone validate my experience and that shifted everything for me. It truly shifted everything for me in my trajectory when I felt like I had a right to ask for at that point. Like, oh, wait, no, hold on. I can ask for this because this is what's happening. And I know both of us probably can't speak enough about the importance of psychoeducation.
Well, and when I have clients come in for the very first time, I have this part of me that wants to just like, I wish I could just take everything in my brain and dump it into you. But unfortunately, you have to do the work of learning. And so quickly, I want to get them in a group because the group is chock full of the psychoeducation, not just the support, not just the I get it, not just the me too, but there's tools in psychoeducation in groups that's huge. So
Well,
I
the right groups.
the right groups, yes. So I want them in a group as soon as possible because that makes our individual work move so much quicker. And then for those who have bandwidth, and if you don't, that's okay. But I'm going to guess if you're listening to the podcast, you are in somewhat of this stage of listening to books, listening to podcasts, reading books, bringing in that information as you're ready for it and as it's applicable. Really, knowledge is power. And I heard someone say the other day, they're like, knowledge isn't power until it's applied. And I'm like, yeah, but I think that's bullcrap because knowledge is power because you first get powered with that information to even have awareness of what is out there and what is reality
And
and
what's possible and what's possible.
yeah.
That PDF I just sent you with the victim emerger, reclaimer, chooser. Love those things because you might think, for example, will I ever trust again? Will I ever love again? Will I ever stop crying? That's in that very victim. This just happened and it's not a bad space. Don't hear me wrong. But this is where we're at because we've just been victimized. I didn't know what thoughts that someone in empowerment would think.
Mhm.
You learned Mel Gibson was my go-to back in the day because that's all I had. And when she started throwing out these empowerment statements, I went, "Oh, that's a thing? Oh, I can think that? Oh, I can believe that?" And that was the psychoeducation. Did I think that and believe that and do it at the time? Well, no. I still needed to emerge. I still need to reclaim and then start practicing empowering thoughts. But it gave me that ability, that hope. Like that one girl, I promise it gets better. So when you learn in your psychoeducation and books, podcasts, what's possible, you're planting a seed of hope. It doesn't mean you have to arrive there right now.
And that, like you just said really quickly, and I know you listeners don't know what we're talking about as far as a worksheet, but it goes through and it has these lists of what it looks like when you're still in that place in the beginning of being a victim, and then how you move into what was your next one? Emerge?
Merger.
Merger. And then it gives what that looks like. And so you almost have this roadmap in front of you. And that's what, as you become empowered with information, it's almost like this roadmap that's like, oh, I actually now can see where I want to get to and how to get there. Because I see a lot of people, they go, well, I remember what it felt like to feel good. So I just want to get back there. But they don't know the steps to get there. And so as you really learn about this, it gives you actual steps to get you to where you want to go.
Yeah. So psychoeducation, however that looks for you, can change, you can adapt. I think that's probably really important. For time purposes, can we just talk about what hinders your healing when you're in this space of like, will I ever, will I ever be happy again? Will I ever heal? So, what are some things, Alana, that you off the top of your head feel
Okay,
like?
off the top of my head, by the way, there's no outline for this episode. So you were really getting top of the head for us today. But self judgment is a big one. Looking to your partner to heal you and fix you. That's where I think I love the Help Her Heal curriculum, but in some ways, partners then dump all of that. They have to make me heal. They just have to do this and this, and I'll heal. And that can be really disempowering. Another thing that can hinder is trying to do too much too fast, trying to power through it.
Mhm.
That's another thing that can hinder. Or on the opposite of burying our head in the sand and just hoping it will go away.
I
That
was
will.
going to say, no one's going to want to hear this one, but it's the denial and the rationalization, justification, minimization. Those hinder not choosing to lean into more of reality and seeing things as they really are. As painful and effing hard as it is, that will hinder and keep you from moving forward and healing is when you just want to, like you said, bury your head in the sand. It's a hard one because I get it. I have total empathy for that state.
And there are some times where it's okay to go hide in your covers and lick your wounds and feel sad. And
Well,
then,
that's different though. That's different from denial, right? What
y-
you're saying.
yes, but I want to slow that down because I would have been one where I would go, okay, I can't bury my head in the sand. Well, if I'm going to go hide in my bed for a week, that's bury my head in the sand. And it's not.
Yeah.
That's what I want to give room and space for is, yeah, there's a big difference between tending to your wounds. And it's okay if sometimes you need to just go hide and take care of yourself. But then there is a continuing to face it. But I was going to say, there was a quote I heard once, and I cannot remember who said it, but it said that the key to mental health is being, I forget the word, but basically being committed to reality at all costs. The key to mental health is being committed to reality at all costs. And I was like, oh, that's so good. And often for where you are right now, reality hurts and it sucks. And as you really are committed to reality, then you actually can deal with what you need to deal with and heal and move through it.
Yeah.
So, not being committed to reality or choosing to only see what we want to see or only hear what we want to hear, I used to love to like whatever my husband gave me, whatever that narrative is, sure felt better than what I was telling myself or what reality was telling me. That kept me very stuck.
Yeah. And I think too, even just avoiding professional help, avoiding help in general can keep you stuck. I know that I've had those that just only they just listen to my podcast and they don't want to actually get help from a professional. That thought of, well, I can figure this out myself. And I know I've been there. So I think on both sides, whether it's the betrayed or the addict, this idea that we can figure it out ourselves or by myself. So avoiding, I think, professional help from those who do get this and are trained in this can also hinder your growth significantly. And then if we were to level up, Alana, oh, did you want to say something to that?
No, it's funny. I literally was going to go exactly where you're headed right now. So,
So if we want to level up a little bit in the sense of those who are further along in your journey, okay, couple things for y'all. who are maybe still wondering, will I ever trust again, love again, da da da, those types of self questioning. Okay, one thing that came to my mind is the somatic healing. So, what can aid in your healing when you're further along in the journey? I think at some point, getting to that place where oh gosh, I love it when my clients recognize this themselves when they're like, okay, I think I've done enough of the psychoeducation, right? And I'm pointing to my frontal cortex. I've done enough learning. I have the language. I know the boundaries. I know what I should be doing. Doesn't mean you're doing it, but I know all the things, right? And why am I not progressing or why am I not? And that is when I would say, great, now it's time to get in the body. And that's when I think that beautiful somatic work is time to take place there and do some, and there's so many different things to do around that somatic work, different modalities, but that's what I would say.
Yeah, that right there, because so much of the beginning stages is really that psychoeducation and learning what this will look like and doing that basic safety and stabilization and education. But then as you're really going through the grieving and the mourning and even the stage 3 of the post-traumatic growth and healing, doing that from the body work is so valuable and so important. And we talked about this. We've done a couple episodes recently on the somatic work. So if you didn't listen to those, go back. But we talk a little bit about that top down versus bottom up healing.
Mhm.
And with betrayal trauma specifically, getting that foundation is that top down, but then moving in and really getting into the body because trauma is stored in the body
Yep.
and that stored memory in all of our cells. So it's not enough to talk about it or learn about it or think about it. We really, yeah, need to let the body release and express all of that.
Yeah. Your body has its own story. And so we need to hear what the body's story is. And it can be really, really beautiful and empowering. It's beautiful work. And then the other thing I'll just say too is along with that is family of origin work. I think when you're further along in the journey and you're moving to more of the somatic story, because your body is holding a lot of your family of origin and ancestral story there too. So if you're moving into that work, be prepared. I remember starting my somatic work and thinking, okay, no, I want to work around my trauma with X and hello, family of origin ancestry work. And I remember telling my therapist, this is not what I want. I don't want to go there. I came to you to work on trauma from my ex. And so be prepared. And it's been a beautiful, empowering journey in of itself. So I think those two is what I would offer to consider doing. Anything else to add to what helps before we go to hinder?
No, I think that's it. We could do a whole episode on what helps, but each one would be its own individual episode. The family of origin is and the somatic work. But with the hindering, when you are further in your journey, when you are like a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years into your journey, and you still feel just as traumatized or you're not healing, I know we say this all the time, but this is where getting a professional to really help dive in and diagnose what's blocking you because it is not a one size fits all. In some cases, I'll have clients come in and their partner is still very much not safe. And that's why they're not progressing because they are constantly in an unsafe environment and their body will not relax because it's doing what it is created to do. In other cases, that they have an undiagnosed comorbid condition that maybe there's some OCD that's coming up or some unhealed trauma or there's some other condition that is blocking their ability to heal here because the brain will connect things together. And so you could have that. Or I'll have some that are, when it comes to all the betrayal trauma work, they've done a good job. Their partner's done a good job with the addiction or acting out, but there is still emotional abuse or physical abuse happening. And so while we have maybe cleaned stuff up in one little area, we still have a huge problem in the relationship, which is not allowing us to heal. Or we could have something else. I'm not going to keep going because I can't think of anything at the moment.
Self
But
identification.
Yeah, over identifying with your trauma, or it becomes your whole life, yes, and your whole identity, and you don't find a way
Recovery,
out.
all of it becomes your entire world, and now you can't let go of that world, and you really haven't connected to yourself in the healing, you've connected to the idea of healing.
Totally, and I've seen somewhere this is the first time you've had a real connection and community with others, and so there's almost this, "Well, if I get better, then I lose all of this connection and all of these new friends or this new support system," and even that can be subconscious. So
Yeah.
there all of these different little areas when you are further along that are blocking your ability to really take it to the next step or to keep healing. And that is so nuanced and so individual that if you are feeling stuck, getting an outside brain to help you, they're not going to tell you the answer, but they're going to help you dissect and figure out what's coming up for you. And then you can start to help figure out why you are stuck. That I just can't emphasize enough the value in doing that. And in doing that, making sure you have the right support. And you should know within about 3 sessions if they're the right person for you. If you've been going for 5 or 6 and you're still going, "Oh, I'm not sure," that might be, time to find somebody who is the right fit, where you can feel safe and that your nervous system can regulate to their nervous system, and that you feel that they have the tools and the knowledge and the skills to help you get to where you need to go.
Yeah. I think we're gonna do a whole episode on that, finding the right professional, so
And
it's in the works.
yeah, it's a hard one. Even when you find a good one, you can find yourself questioning of, okay, but are they the right one for me? I guess we'll wrap up that question of will it ever get better? The answer is yes. It absolutely can get better. And the fact that you're sitting here listening to this podcast and you are putting in that effort shows me that you are trying and there is that desire. And when I have a client come to my office and they've been through 4 therapists and they are so discouraged, and I go, yeah, but look at their resiliency. That you, no matter how many times you were knocked down with not having a good experience, you are still so resilient that you keep going to find the right person.
Mhm.
And that gives me no doubt in my mind that you will figure out how to heal. And you listening to this podcast, whether someone shared it with you and you were brave enough to listen, or you went and you hunted down those tools and those resources because you were willing to do the work to figure out how to heal, that's not a little thing. And so you will heal. And just remember that when you're in the middle of the dark, it can feel scary and it can feel hopeless. And you are going to desperately want to be back in the light again, and the sun will rise again. You just got to keep putting one foot in front of the other and find those people who have been in the dark and experienced the dark and the depths and the heaviness of the dark, but also know how to help guide you to the light. As always, thank you for hanging out with us this week. And we look forward to seeing you all next week.
Hello, my name's Morgan Ellsworth, and I'm excited to share with you about the Resilient Teens support group for teens whose parents have experienced betrayal in their marriage and need support while navigating their own experience with betrayal. This will be a processing group for teens ages 15 to 18 to share their experiences and learn valuable tools for coping, such as emotional regulation, managing triggers, healthy communication, and living true to personal values. This group is open to both boys and girls, but will separate based into 2 groups based on gender. The group runs on Wednesdays at 4:30 Mountain Time, and you can find the information to register on the Choose Recovery Services website. I'm looking forward to working with you and your teens, and please do not hesitate to reach out if you have any questions at all. Hello, my name is Morgan Ellsworth, and I'm here to share with you information about a new group offered by Choose Recovery Services and led by myself for adult children who have experienced betrayal at the hands of their parents and need support while navigating their own experience and journey with betrayal. This group is called the Adult Children United and Healing Group and will be a processing group for adult children ages 18 and older to come together to share their experience, gain community, learn valuable tools for coping, such as emotional regulation, managing triggers, healthy communication, and living true to personal values. This group meets on Thursday evenings at 6 o'clock Mountain Time, and you can register at the Choose Recovery Services website. If you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to reach out, and I'm looking forward to working with your adult children who are navigating their own journey of healing.
Are you feeling stuck in this space of should I stay or should I go? I think after this kind of betrayal, we have all thought about that D word and scared of it as well. Sometimes people can push you, pressure you towards a decision to stay or go, and that can feel overwhelming, keep us even further stuck. I don't think anyone can make this decision but you, because I believe that you are the only one that actually has the answer within. That's why I created the Should I Stay or Should I Go self-paced guide, so that you can take your time walking through all of the 8 modules that I have there, where you are going to get journal prompts with each one, action steps to help you gain more clarity about what you really want. Did you hear the take your time part? Let's slow this down. Let's make space and dig into the fears that keep you from knowing the answer. Through my own journey and deeply personal decision around should I stay or should I go, I realized that there is no, quote, right choice, but that I make the choice right by being the chooser of it. You can head over to the show notes and get your guide and start today. As always, continue to choose healing, to choose recovery, and as always, continue to choose you. Take care, everybody.